Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to an amazing game that I prepared for you today. It's a brilliant game played by the world champion Magnus Carlsen against the former world championship challenger Boris Gelfand. The game was played in 2008. Of course, Magnus Carlsen wasn't still the world champion in chess, but he was, I think, the rising star. And back in 2008, Boris Gelfand was really a great player, one of the best players in the world. So it was really a great battle. And if I probably would not have told you that they played blindfolded chess, I think you wouldn't even recognize the difference because the accuracy level is really high in this game. Both of them played really beautiful chess, especially Magnus Carlsen, because his calculations were really wild and his repositions were also really great. There are many great maneuvers in the game that I will show you now, played by Magnus Carlsen. And as I said, his accuracy level was so high that he basically played two tiny little inaccurate moves. Every other moves he played basically like the best engine, by the stockfish engine. So it was really incredible how Magnus Carlsen pulled off this blindfolded chess. So let's check out now this beautiful and epic game. So here Magnus played the move e4. We have c5 by Boris. We have knight to f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight to d4, and after move knight to f6 we have knight to c3, and after a6 we have now the Najdorf Sicilian on the board. And many times white is playing bishop to g5, the positional idea of trying maybe to mess up the pawn structure by taking out the knight, creating a double pawn structure, or is launching a flank attack with f3 or h3, then followed with g4. So you can be the judge of any of these positions. You can really prepare again your game against a Najdorf in a way that you want. You have really, I think, many flexible ideas for white. Magnus pulled off now the so-called Adams attack with the move h3, and is trying now to launch a flank attack with the move g4. So here in the continuation we have e6. Now Boris Gelfand is now creating the so-called chevening structure with his moves e6 and d6. He has still the flexibility in one particular moment to break the position in the center with the move d5, or if necessary even with the move e5, if he doesn't want to tolerate maybe the knight in the center of the board in the future, then still has the flexibility to launch a move e5. So as I said, this pawn structure in the center is really flexible and it's mobile. It's, I think, many times the main strength in this types of structure. So after move e6, Magnus continues with his plan. g4, we have b5. Many times also black is launching a counter attack here on the queen side. So it's many times this opposite side attack game. Black is launching a queen side attack, white is launching a king side attack, and who is faster on the attack will probably win the game. So here in the continuation we have bishop to g2. The serious threat is of course the move e5, liberating the long diagonal for the bishop and capture the rook. So that's why you have to compete now with the move bishop to b7. Now we have kingside castling. If you play something like g5, many times I've seen these ideas, but okay, this is okay. You not lose the game because you played now the move g5, but this is something that you should not do. Be flexible, be patient in your attack, because okay, you get the tempo, but now I think after this move your attack has splashed. White can of course proceed here with the move bishop to e3, bishop to e7, f4, but black doesn't have to even castle on your attack. Black doesn't have to castle into your attack, will eventually break the position with the move e5, and in my opinion this is something that black can defend very easily. So that's why after move bishop to b7, here castling was played by Magnus Carlsen. He's saying, okay, I will not castle now queenside. We will not have the kings castled on opposite side, but still white has now the flexibility to go f4, then maybe e5, f4, f5, and similar stuff. So white can still launch the flank attack even if black castles now on the same side, but this would be then again a sharp game. Of course, the bad part about your f4 pawn attack is of course that you could be vulnerable here on some dartboard attacks by black, so you should be also careful from white's perspective. So here h6 was played by Boris Gelfand. We have rook to e1. Now Magnus is saying, okay, you played already the move h6. This is probably not the most accurate of ways to play. Now you delayed the move bishop to e7. I'm trying now to get an e-file attack, because many mistakes you can make already here. For instance, if you try knight to c6, then you will probably lose the game immediately with the move e5. The problem is now after something like d takes e5, you will lose the piece. Even if you take here the knight on d4, then queen to d4, and the Problem is now both pieces are hanging. Even if you take now the bishop on g2, of course white will not take the bishop immediately. White will take simply the knight. Now when you retreat with the bishop somewhere to b7, then you lose the battle here around the square g7. We have the fork, and this is game over for black. So this is something that bothers, of course, black in the continuation. Knight to c6 is not possible. For instance, if you try something like b4 here, it's similar to this idea when white is playing the move g5. This is not the way how black should make progress here. Black has to be patient also here on the queen side. After move b4, now we have a stunning tactic, knight to d5, and I've seen many times in the Najdorf Sicilian this hop, this jump in the center of the board, because the game is now really weird for black. Black cannot take the knight on d5, because here after e takes d5, the king is naked, and even if you try to cover yourself with the move bishop to e7, then knight to f5 is perfectly fine. Even if you try here something like I don't know, king to d7 to escape, then we can use this element c3, and then with queen to a4 again, black is facing many tactical problems. So it's probably game over here. So what you could do, maybe in after this move knight to d5, you could maybe try knight to d7, but now white has a really subtle, beautiful, slow move that is perfectly fine. Now has the move a3, and this is a brilliant move. It seems like it's nothing special move, but in my opinion it's such a beautiful move that only works in really these types of structures. After move a3, you have to take. That's the beauty. If you don't take, then of course this could happen after potential, I don't know, rook to a8. Even if you try with the queen, then you could also get the fork. So you have to be careful. So that's why you have to take here instead of this move a4 a5, pardon me. After b takes a3, now the rook will come into the game, and notice now the a6 is an isolated pawn. It's a long-term weakness. So still black is holding white is holding the knight in the center of the board. So here white is much better. In the continuation, we can also try, I think, some maneuvers with the rook all over the third rank, but as I said, the main tactical goal is now the weak pawn on a6. So this is something that black should not do. So after move rook to e1, as we said, black has to be careful. So that's why e5 was played by Boris Gelfand. But when you sometimes improve one weakness, you create another. Now the f5 is of course a huge positional problem. Still g6 is possible, but now after move knight to e3, we can notice now that this is now the positional target. This is now the weakness in black's camp, the weak d5 square. Also, what we can notice is of course that the backward pawn on d6 is a problem, a positional problem, but so far not a huge problem, because this pawn is protected, and still white cannot create more pressure because the b5 is taken. If of course you could manage somehow to get your knight on b5, maybe to build sort of a battery on the d file, then of course the d6 would be weakness. But so far we should not worry about the d6. The main target is, as I said, the weak square on d5. So here we have knight from b to d7. We have now again the similar idea, a4. In the previous line when black played the move b4, white played also the move a3. You see, we want to get a clear on the queen side. We want to expose a little bit black here. After move b4, now we want to take, and you see now there are many weaknesses here in black's camp. All of the squares can be of course occupied by white. So here in the continuation we have knight to d5, and if you take now bishop to d5, then of course queen to d5. If you try maybe to attack the queen further, queen to b3 is going to happen, and still the d5 problem is not solved. In the continuation we will try rook to d1, bishop to e3. We'll continue simply the pressure, and maybe also the b4 can be taken. So then afterwards the d6 could be weak. So in my opinion this is much better position here for white. So in the continuation, after move knight to d5, we have a5. Here Boris Gelfand is fixing his pawn structure, but now Magnus again plays against this main space advantage that black has built here. Although after b takes c3, this pawn is isolated, but this pawn is protected by the knight, and we have seen that in no way white is going to get challenged by the move bishop to d5, because here queen to d5 would be the continuation. Basically black doesn't want to give up the light square bishop, which is at least somehow controlling the weakness on d5. So here we have bishop to e7. Magnus is attacking further the position with the rook to b1, bishop to c6, and now comes a really beautiful positional move by Magnus Carlsen, and as I pointed out, this is blindfolded chess. Here Magnus Carlsen will show really his great positional skills. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's not the continuation that wins the game, so it's not a tactical solution. It's not so like in this chess puzzles when we have maybe a checkmate in 2, checkmate on 3, or when we gain decisive material. No, let's see now really a beautiful progress that white can make and go really beautifully in positionally into the game. So pause the video and try to see now the best continuation. It's very important to see this kind of move. So okay, I hope you could have played the game like Magnus Carlsen, because this was really incredible what he saw. As we said, the d5 is a huge positional problem. So when we have a square weakness when you of course notice a square weakness in your opponent's position, then basically what you want to get is to get rid of any defender of that square. So it means now we want to get rid of the knight. That can be also that could also protect the d5 square, but also we want to get rid of the bishop. So these two pieces we want to trade off, whatever we have to do. And that's why this move is really beautiful by Magnus. Bishop to f1 with the idea to play bishop to b5 and then get rid of, because in no way, really no way, black is going to give up the bishop just for the knight, because as we said, queen to d5 will happen and still you haven't solved any of your problems around the square d5. So really beautiful maneuver. So we have now h5, bishop to b5, bishop to b5, and now rook to b5. Look how Magnus Carlsen's rook gets into the game. So far Magnus played really a beautiful, accurate game, almost like the Stockfish engine at home. So really wild stuff. So after move rook to b5, we have h takes g4, and now comes the first move, as I said, the slight inaccuracy by Magnus, but you can be again the judge of this position, because in my opinion still this is a perfect move, because here Magnus played h takes g4. He stayed compact here, although for instance the top engine Stockfish at home suggests this move, rook to b7, with the idea then to play the fork on c7. If you play something like rook to h3, then knight to c7 could be a continuation, and still it's a very dangerous position, especially because here of some h-file attacks. So as I said, this is something to study really deeper with the top engine. But after move h takes g4 here, Magnus Carlsen is staying in the game for sure. He still has the opportunity to play rook to b7. So we have here bishop to h4. Now Magnus is playing queen to f3, now with the idea to play something like rook to b7, and of course continue the pressure, because also the f7 is a huge weakness. So we have here knight to f6, and now comes a beautiful move here by Magnus Carlsen, rook to b7. If you play knight to d5, of course, then you get checkmated on f7. So look how the queen gets connected with the rooks, although they're on different sides of the board, but now they have a clear target, the f7 weakness. So after move rook to b7, here Boris Gelfand tried to defend with the normal idea. I think it's a decent idea. Queen to c8, of course, attacking the g4 and also attacking the rook. This makes perfectly sense, but not when it comes to calculations. Now Magnus Carlsen takes over, plays now a beautiful move g5, sacrifices simply the rook, because if you take here queen takes b7, then queen to f6 comes with a direct threat, and in order to defend yourself you have to, I think, even kingside castle here. But now with queen to d6 this is game over, because the problem is now knight to f6 will happen, and in one particular moment we can play also king to g2, rook to h1, and look at this bishop is trapped. Magnus Carlsen paralyzed really the Najdorf bishop, which is really amazing. When you think this is blindfold chess, Magnus Carlsen comes up with this kind of an idea to paralyze his opponent's piece. So this was really a beautiful tactical idea. As I said, queen to b7 is simply not working. Here Boris Gelfand has to play still this idea. Every other move is even worse. He tried now knight to d5, because after queen to f7, okay, he thought that he could maybe defend this position with the move e7. He tried now after e takes d5 by Magnus Carlsen. This was now, of course, the preparation to deliver checkmate. He tried now some perpetuals with queen to g4. He probably thought that he could maybe reach a drawish position by just delivering some checks, but now Magnus again calculated this position really beautifully. Played king to e2, we have queen to g4, king to d3, and after queen to f5, okay, the queens have to be traded, but now after queen to f5, g takes f5, now rook to h1, we have king to c8, and after rook to f7, believe me or not, here in this position, Boris Gelfand resigned. So why did he resign? Because again, the same problem, again, the bishop is paralyzed here on h4. You could do many things, even if you try something like e4 to attack the king, then king to c2. If you try maybe to include the rook into the game, or maybe to try to trade it off for this rook, which is very annoying, of course, on the 7th rank, then a bishop to e3, normal development, you can maybe try to trade it off. But now with the rook to f5, here you can try maybe rook to h7 to finally protect your here on the h file. But now with g6, the game is simply over. So even if you try, still ideas on bishop to g5, this pressure on the h file is simply too much to handle. Even if you try f4, if you don't play e4, if you try f4 to keep your pawns protected, then we can simply play king to e4. This is a beautiful move because now the king can be included into the attack. Even if we try again the same idea, rook to b8, maybe to trade off the rooks, we'll simply play g6, we'll simply continue the pressure, rook to b7. But now this is also really perfectly fine. Even if you try rook to d8, now again you see first we take out the rook, and then also the bishop is hanging. If you stay, of course, like this in the game, then g8, we have the promotion. So the rook on h8 is a little bit overloaded, so that's why it was game over. So really beautiful game played by Magnus Carlsen, especially this maneuver bishop to f1, then also the tactics in the end, really amazing when you think about how this is blindfolded chess, and Magnus Carlsen is almost playing like the Stockfish engine. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. So this game will be included into our best chess games of all time list. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this that were played in chess history, check out my whole playlist. Here's the link to the place. You can also see some beautiful games that have been played by other grandmasters. And if you want to see the top engines battling in their best chess games, check out my best chess games by computers. Here's also links. We have some games played by Stockfish, Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.